We can get started. All right. So today I'd like to share with you a simple way that you can distinguish yourself from uh, the majority of people who don't get results in their lives. And this one simple thing that you can do uh, can make a world of difference. And it's probably something that, unless you've heard me talk about it before, you've probably not thought about this before. So for many people, this will be um, eye-opening. So here's what it is. If you pay attention to how you've conducted your life up to now, most likely you will find that you have been seeking out something that will change your life for you. You probably have been thinking that you can find some kind of insight that will transform your life, or perhaps some kind of miraculous occurrence that will change your life. Perhaps you will have some kind of event that will change your life. And if you tell the truth, that hasn't been working out the way that you'd hoped. So there's a definition of insanity, which you might be aware of. It is to keep doing the same things and expect different results. So if you keep doing the same things that have not been giving you good results and you expect that that's going to produce a different outcome in your life, then you might want to consider that that might not be the best approach. And instead, you might want to consider that you could think about what might be a different approach that could give you better results. And that's what I'm going to propose to you today. So you may have heard me say this before, and if you haven't, then you'll hear me say it now, which is that insight is worth a dime a dozen. Because insight by itself does not actually produce real change most of the time. In fact, I would go as far as to say insight by itself does not produce real change. Insight has to be coupled with a change in behavior in order for that to produce real change in your life. And so you have to be willing to actually do something different in your life consistently if you want real changes. The reason why is because if you take a look, you'll probably notice that your life is actually, it actually consists of what you do. So sometimes we might think, oh, well, but I'm so enlightened. I'm such an intelligent person. I'm such a nice person. I'm such a delightful person. I'm such a, evolved person. Why does my life suck? Well, it might be because there's a mismatch between how you think of yourself and how you actually behave. And so if you want different results in your life, you actually have to do things differently. And I know some people are going to say, but I do many things differently and I'm not getting the results. Well, maybe the things that you're doing are not the right things. So sometimes people make that mistake also. They think, well, I've done everything. I've tried everything and nothing works. Well, have you actually tried everything? Are you sure about that? I mean, because if that's the truth, if you've done everything and nothing works, then give up. Like, sincerely, just give up. Because if you have really done everything and nothing works, what other possible solution is there? You've done everything and nothing works. You've already concluded that. So there's no possibility. Just give up. But if you can recognize that actually you haven't tried everything, and therefore you cannot conclude that nothing works, then there's a possibility that you could actually change your life in a positive way. So it's useful to start from the right understanding. Just tell yourself the truth, which is you haven't tried everything, and possibly you've been doing things in ways that have not been working well for you, and that's why you've been getting the results that you've been getting. Or even if you say, well, things are working well enough sort of in certain ways, great. I mean, I'm not here to say anything that like everything is broken in your life. I'm just saying there are probably some things that are not optimal, and you can improve those things. That's within reach for you. You actually have the ability to do that. And in order to do that, you need to actually empower yourself, or you need to claim your authentic power and recognize that you actually have to do those things. You have to take the steps. You have to choose to make those changes in your life. And that's going to happen through your own empowerment. It's not going to happen because somebody else is going to do it for you. It's not going to happen because of the event that you're going to participate in. I'm not denying that there might not be things which could catalyze change, but ultimately the real change has to be sustained through your change in behavior. It has to happen because you're actually making the change in how you think, how you feel, how you react, how you perceive, and the actions that you're taking in your life on a day-to-day basis. It's not going to happen because you do something once. It would be, it'd be like if you said, I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to go for a run. I mean, if you did that once, is that going to work? No, it's not going to work. I'm going to I'm gonna I'm gonna get healthy. I'm gonna eat a salad. I mean, okay, interesting, but what about tomorrow? What about for dinner? What are you gonna do next week? It's what you do consistently, day after day after day, that's going to produce the changes. So if you say, well, I'm gonna think a nice thought. Okay, that's nice. But if you think that that should change your life, it's not gonna work. Okay, so you have to actually be willing to make changes consistently in order to get the results. So now here's where uh, this falls apart for most people. I mean, if people even get this far, because even to understand what I've said up to this point, most people don't even have that understanding. So good news is now you're ahead of most people if you've understood that much. That if you want change, you have to make the changes, and they have to be sustainable. So, a lot of the time people think, okay, I'm going to make the change. I'm going to, I want to get in shape. So I'm going to run 5 miles. But how are you going to be able to sustain that? No. So it's not going to work for you because you can use your willpower until you run out of it. And if you've ever burnt out, then you know what that experience is like. If you have not had that experience yet, then I encourage you to just take my word for it and not actually have to find out the hard way, because finding out the hard way is a very hard way. It hurts a great deal to actually burn out. And so there is a different way. You don't have to abuse your willpower. That is a way that's often promoted. I've noticed that. I've noticed that there are a lot of teachings out there which advocate for using your willpower in this abusive fashion. I mean, there's a good reason why you have willpower. It's useful, but it should be utilized skillfully. Maybe you need to sometimes use a little bit of willpower just to kind of, get yourself up off the couch. Maybe that's useful if you don't have a better way, at least. But if you're using your willpower not only to get yourself up off the couch, but to then push yourself to run 1 mile, and then to push yourself to run 2 miles, and then to push yourself to run 3 miles, and so forth, and then to keep doing that day after day after day after day. And it's not just with running; it's with how doing your job, and it's with being a parent and being a spouse and being a child and being a neighbor and being a citizen, and with all the things that you're doing in your life. If you're using your willpower in this way, that's not going to last for very long. If you have been, so everybody's been born with a different allotment of willpower. Some people were born and they were given a very hefty dose. You got enough that you could ride on that for 40 years. If you got superpowers of willpower, you go from age 0 to 40, and you could just be going from day to night. You could get up at 3 a.m. and you just keep going, go, 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 whip yourself until it's like 11 p.m. And then you get into bed and then you start over the next morning and you just keep doing that same thing until you hit 40 and then you crash. Most of us, blessedly, we didn't get that kind of dose of willpower. So maybe some of us could do that for 20 years, or some of us could do that, like not quite that intensely for 25 years or something like that. But you cannot push yourself beyond how much willpower you have. And there is a limit to that. So if that's the only way that you know how to do things, then now would be an excellent time to learn a different way, because that way will, number one, like I said, you will eventually burn out. And when you burn out, that's going to be devastating if that's the only way that you know how to do things. Think about that. Think about if that's the only way that you know how to do things and your entire life depends upon it. And then one day you can't do it anymore. What will you do then? How will you do anything if the only way that you know how to do things is no longer available to you? So think about that. If you have been abusing willpower, I strongly encourage you to rethink that strategy, because it is not a good way to go about running your life. Because number one, as I said, you will eventually burn out. And also, by the way, in the meantime, how enjoyable is that? It sucks, doesn't it? I mean, come on, you don't want to live your life like that. What's the point? Just whip yourself day in and day out. Look at all the stuff that I've gotten done. Who cares? You don't care. It's like, what's in it for you? You're just miserable if that's the only way that you know how to do your life. So blessedly, there are other ways. And I'm just pointing this out because I see that this is a problem. There are many advocates of abusing willpower, and it doesn't work. So please don't mislead yourself and think that that's the only way to be successful in life, because it's definitely not. And I'm also pointing it out because in order to really change your life, it has to be sustainable for you. So trying to do the thing that you think, the ultimate expression of whatever it is that you believe is required in order to get the change, is not the only way. It's like you know this one about how to eat an elephant. I mean, first of all, I guess you could just choose not to do it, right? I mean, that would be one option. Personally, I'm not into eating elephants, but if you were to want to eat an elephant, we could look at it this way. How does one eat a very, the world's largest cucumber, something like that? So this can be more palatable to more people. But the answer to that is one bite at a time. So if you think I have to do, this long list of things in order to change my life, and in order to get through that long list of things every day, I have to start at 3 a.m. and I have to go until 11 p.m. Just tell the truth about it. You're not going to succeed at that. And so, fortunately, there's a different way. So if you think about, I already gave the elephant example and the cucumber example, but think about anything in your life. If you wanted to, let's say, build a house, you could take the approach of, I have to build the house from start to finish in one day. That would be one way to do it. Probably not going to work for you. Now, you could do something today, and it might not look like much. And then you could do something tomorrow, and it still might not look like much. But if you kept doing something every day, then there will eventually be a house. Think about it, if you wanted to learn to play a musical instrument, and you could say, well, the only way that I know in order to learn how to play a musical instrument is to practice for 8 hours every day. Interesting, but are you going to do that? I mean, if you've got a job and kids and all the rest, probably not. So then you could just give up on that idea, right? It's like, forget about it. You'll never play the piano or the violin or the guitar or the whatever instrument, the flute or whatever. It's never going to happen. You could take that approach. You could just say, well, it's never going to happen because the only way to do it is to practice for 8 hours every day. Well, you could look at it differently, which is how much time do you have every day that you could actually dedicate to that? 10 minutes perhaps. You think you could have, if you were really interested in learning to play a musical instrument, do you suppose that maybe you could find 10 minutes every day? Probably. I mean, the truth is we could almost always find 10 minutes a day for something if it's important. Now, do you suppose that if you were to practice playing a musical instrument every day for 10 minutes, that you would get better at it? Of course you would. For sure. There's no doubt about it. You would get better at it. Would you become a virtuoso overnight? No. I mean, very unlikely. But if you do it consistently, you'll get better at it. So now I've told you everything you need to know. I hope that makes sense. But just in case it doesn't make sense, I'll see if I can fill in the gaps. So there are some areas of your life that you would like to improve. True? So whatever those might be, like you might say, well, you've got some things that you'd like to improve with your physical health, some things you'd like to improve with your mental health, some things you'd like to improve with your relationships, some things you'd like to improve with your relationship with finances, some things you'd like to improve in terms of your creative expression, right? There might be some things in your life that you would like to improve. And you can definitely do that. And the way to do that is every day dedicate some time to those improvements. And specifically, you want to dedicate some time to changing your behavior as it relates to those things. And when I say behavior, both inner behavior and outer behavior. So it really starts fundamentally with the inner, because if your inner behavior, meaning the way that you're thinking, the way that you're perceiving, these kinds of things, if that inner behavior doesn't change, then it's going to be very difficult for you to actually sustain any changes in outer behavior. You think about it. If you're telling yourself, I'll never succeed, I'm a loser, I'm unlovable, I suck, nothing's good enough, everything has to be perfect and I can't be perfect enough, what's the point? If you're telling yourself that kind of thing, and you're saying, everybody judges me, nobody will accept me, it's going to be hugely embarrassing, what's the point in trying? If you're telling yourself these kinds of things, how long are you going to be able to sustain any kind of motivation to do the outer behaviors that are going to take you to whatever outcome you want? Not very long. Even before that, of course, you have to have clarity. Oh, I should have started with this. First, of course, you have to know what you want, right? So first of all, you'd have to have clarity about what you want. Then you have to clean up whatever internal stuff there is. And then, of course, you've eventually got to, sooner or later, take some outer steps in alignment with whatever it is you want. Even if it's just to accept the thing that's coming to you, right? Like if you say, well, all I want is to have $1 million, and I don't care how the $1 million shows up, I just want it to show up. And so I don't want to have to take any action. Well, you at least have to take the action of being willing to accept it. So there's at least that much. So there's some kind of outer action that's required, even if it's very minimal. So in order to make those changes, you have to be willing to apply yourself consistently, day by day. Now, a lot of the time, what people do is they say, well, that sounds nice, but I don't even know where to begin. I need to have it all mapped out. I need to know exactly step by step before I'm willing to do anything. Well, that's interesting. And that's one way to do it. You could wait until you have the perfect plan. And if that's important to you, then that's always available to you. You could, you know, take some steps toward developing the perfect plan. But I don't know about you, but I've often found that the perfect plan, doesn't, I'm not sure it exists. So there's maybe like a good enough plan to actually just start to take some steps in the right direction. And when you start to take some steps in the right direction, then maybe what you find is that you figure out what the next steps are after that. So if you think about what it is that you want, have you thought about what you want? Maybe you think about it for a moment right now. Think about what you want. So now the thing about what you want is it has to be something positive. So imagine this. Imagine that I go to I go to some sort of travel agent. Okay, I go to the travel agent and I say, I'd like to take a trip. And the travel agent says, great, where would you like to go? And I say, well, I definitely not like to go to Alaska. And they say, okay, great. Cross that off. Okay, now where would you like to go? And I say, well, and I definitely would not like to go to Poland. And, nothing against Poland or Alaska. It's just, I don't feel like traveling to those places. I say, great. Okay, we'll cross off Poland. Now, where would you like to go? And I say, well, I don't want to go to Paraguay. Okay, we'll cross off Paraguay. And, okay, now where would you like to go? See, it's not going to help in this process for me to tell the agent where I don't want to go. I have to tell the person where I do want to go. And so what you want in life is like that. You have to know what you actually want, not what you don't want. What you don't want maybe is helpful slightly, possibly because maybe you could convert it to what you do want. But you at least have to do that much so that you can get clear about what you do want. Just think about it. A lot of people say, well, I don't want to be broke. Well, I don't want to have a shitty relationship. Okay, great. But what do you want? Okay, somebody wants to go to Canada. Canada's a big place. You might want to narrow it down a little bit. But you have to think about what do you actually want in a positive sense, because you can only actually get to and take positive steps towards something that is a real thing. Because if your strategy is away from, that creates all kinds of problems. So you just don't waste your time on that. Get clear about what you do want. A lot of people, they get stuck here. They're afraid to commit to something. So I can help you out there. It's not like a marriage. You could just like you could just commit for today. It's not even doesn't even have to be a commitment for today. It could just be a commitment just for the purposes of an exploration, just to see what happens next. Because when you choose something to put your positive attention on so that you can begin to move toward it, this helps you to orient yourself and it helps you to begin to actually get clarity in your life. Before you commit to something, you're going to be in this area where you just can't get clarity. So you have to be willing to just commit to something at least long enough that you can start to get some clarity, because maybe you start to take some steps in that direction, and then because you're doing that, you get some clarity, like you're getting closer to the thing. And then because you have that clarity, you start to realize, oh, actually, that's not what I want. Well, that's useful. Now you know you don't want to, don't want to go to Alaska, don't want to go to Poland, don't want to go to Paraguay, don't want that either. So now, what do you want? Most often though, it'll be kind of like somebody says they want to go to Canada. So great. So you say, okay, I want to go to Canada. Great, I'm going to Canada. And then you realize, oh, well, Canada is a big place. Not not very well just going to go to Canada. You got to go somewhere. Where are you going to go? Even if you say going to Vancouver, where in Vancouver? I mean, so like, okay, interesting. Now we've narrowed it down. Not just going to Canada, going to Vancouver. But where in Vancouver are you going to go? So as you actually start to commit, then you can start to get clearer and more specific. So, people say they start out, well, I want financial freedom, which for most people is just a code word for I want to get out of debt. So you can phrase it as I want financial freedom, which sounds so nice, but actually in your brain, you're translating that into I need to pay off the 50,000. So your attention is actually what you want to get away from. I want to get away from the debt. I want to get away from the $50,000 burden that is weighing me down. So as long as your attention is going to that, you're not actually orienting yourself toward what you want. And then you tell the truth. You don't actually pay off the debt. So there's a reason for that. It's the law of attention. Whatever you put your attention on, that's what grows in your life. So if you're putting your attention on, say, I want financial freedom, but it's really I want to get rid of the debt. Your attention's going to the debt, which means you sustain the debt. There's a thing. So your subconscious, it's not interested in what's good. Doesn't know anything about that. All it knows is it just wants more clarity. And so you give it whatever you're putting your attention on, it's just like, great, I'm going to get more and more of that. So your subconscious doesn't know that debt is undesirable. Your subconscious just says, well, gee, boss, you're telling me to put my attention on it. I'm going to get more and more of that. I want more clarity about how, like you're going to know so much about this debt. It's going to be amazing. The only problem is that's not actually what you want. So you have to get clear. What do you want? Okay, so once you've done that, then you can start to actually take some steps in the direction of what you truly want. Now, in order to do that, like I said, you want to actually do something that's sustainable regularly. If you're not going to do that, then you're not actually going to achieve the results. So it's like if you want to go to Vancouver, then you got to take the steps until you're there. Even if you're going to take a plane, you still have to do whatever is necessary. Like you've got to get to the airport, you've got to get to the terminal, you've got to get on the plane, you've got to stay on the plane, and then you've got to, get off of the plane in Vancouver. You got to get to go through all these steps. And if you don't do them, then you're just stuck. So a lot of the time people are waiting for the thing. They're just waiting for it to happen. Why isn't it happening? Why hasn't it happened yet? When's it going to happen? Maybe it will happen when I go to the next retreat. I had such an amazing experience on the last retreat, which, by the way, didn't change anything for you, did it? I know some people say, oh, it did change things. Well, great. Why are you here then? Because it didn't change things, not sufficiently. I'm not denying that the insights have value. It's just that the value has to be applied. So when you have that insight, like, you go on the retreat and you realize, oh, I've been living a lie. Great. But how are you going to change it? See, just having the insight doesn't change it. How many times have you gone on the retreat and you realize you're living a lie, and then you come back home and you continue living the lie until you go on the next retreat and you're like, I'm living a lie. Go back home, you continue living the lie. So the amazing thing is that you don't have to go on the retreats. You don't have to take the psychedelics. You don't have to do any of those things. If you want to, that's your business. But that's not what's going to produce the real change in your life. What's going to produce the real change is taking the tiniest little insight, the kind of insight that you could have right now if you just actually are truthful with yourself. Doesn't have to be this sort of, psychedelic, mind-blowing kind of thing. It could just be really, really simple and small if you just tell the truth right now. And one really powerful way to do that for yourself is just acknowledge something that you truly want. It doesn't have to be the be all end all of all things that you want. It's just something that you want. What's something that you want? Like something that you want enough that you'd be willing to actually do something, that you'd actually be willing to make some kind of change in your life for it. Have you got something in mind? Okay. So now just for a moment, and if it's easier for you to do with eyes closed, you might close your eyes and just imagine what it might be like to actually fulfill that desire. And if you can do it, imagine actually seeing yourself, like as if you were watching a movie of yourself having achieved that desire, and notice that version of yourself. Notice what's different about that version of yourself. That version of yourself has learned some lessons, has discovered some important things. That version of yourself is connected with some inner resources. And that's why that version of yourself has achieved that. Now, that's the version of yourself that you want to become, because that's the only way that you can achieve what you want to achieve. So now you have an insight. Now you know exactly what is necessary for you to be able to achieve what you want. So that insight by itself, is that going to get you there? Right? If you have the insight, now let's say we call it a day, wrap up the meeting. Does that insight change anything for you? Just by itself? Doesn't do anything really. And by the way, by tomorrow you'd have forgotten, right? If it's just an insight, you might say, oh, I'd never forget this. It's so important. It's like the last psychedelic trip you had, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. I'll never forget. This is life changing. And then a week later, you totally forgot. So this little insight, you could easily forget it by tomorrow, if not by later today. By dinner, it will be gone because life will have intervened. Your spouse, your children, your neighbor, your boss, whoever, something's gonna happen. And then you'll forget. See, insight by itself doesn't change anything. But when you couple that insight with something that you do consistently day by day, you can get there. So now you know where you want to get to. You have a destination. That destination is something within you. It's that knowledge, the inner resources, it's that inner change that will allow you to have whatever it is that you want. By the way, between you and me, this is the real magic. See, we think we want the thing, but we don't actually want the thing. We want the change that's necessary in order to have the thing. I mean, the thing is nice too, but if you just had $1 million or the adoring spouse or you're on vacation or whatever the thing is you think you want, tell the truth, it wouldn't really do it for you. It might be nice, but the thing itself couldn't really give you the real fulfillment that you're looking for. So I'm not trying to dissuade you from the thing, because the thing is a useful vehicle, but I'm just making the point that it's actually the transformation that's required in order to have the thing that we really want. That's the real goal, is that transformation. And so sometimes people get hung up because they say, well, I don't know if I could really achieve the thing. Maybe it's out of reach for me. The amazing thing is it doesn't matter. Because if you're willing to do what's needed in order to move in that direction, you will absolutely, without any doubt, make the inner transformation, whether you achieve the outer thing or not. If you make the inner transformation, that will give you what you really want. But in order to make that inner transformation, you have to be willing to make the change. You have to be willing to take those steps. Nobody else can deliver that to you. That's why waiting for the thing to happen isn't actually a good plan. Because you say, well, but all I want is the $1 million. And so the $1 million is just going to show up. And when the $1 million shows up, then I'll be happy. No, it's not going to work. Because even if the $1 million showed up, you wouldn't be happy because you hadn't made the inner change. You hadn't actually gone through that transformation. So in order to actually have what you want in truth, you have to be willing to undergo that transformation. And the amazing thing is, you get to choose that day by day, step by step. So now you have the insight what it is that's necessary. Now you might not know every last little detailed step, but you know what it's like. Now you know, it's sort of like you have an itinerary in a sense. Okay, so you know, it'd be like you're going to Vancouver and you're going to stay at, I've never been to Vancouver, so I have no idea where you might stay, but you're going to stay at a particular place. And you've already, you know, the address, and you've seen the photographs, and you've read the reviews, and you know the directions, you know how you're going to get from the airport to that place, and you know what things you're going to see. You're going to go to this museum and you're going to go to that thing while you're in Vancouver. You've got it all planned out. So in a similar way now, you know where you're going. You know who that person is that you want to be. And so now it's just a matter of like booking your flight, showing up at the airport. You still have to do your part. That's why the insight by itself is not sufficient. But when you couple that with the willingness to take the steps to fulfill it, you can absolutely succeed. So just think about now, and if this is not clear to you, then just do that exercise again. So you can again think about what it is that you want. Imagine seeing yourself already having fulfilled that. And then notice, who is that person? Because that person is doing things differently. That person has learned important lessons. That person is connecting with important inner resources. This tells you exactly what's necessary for you to be able to achieve that. So now you know that this is your path. This is how you achieve it. Day by day, practice that. And you can make that granular in whatever way makes sense to you. Like, let's say that you identify that in order to achieve that, you have to that person who's achieved that is connecting very powerfully with the inner resources uh, of love and um, joy. And you might say, well, I don't seem to be doing that very much right now. Great, now you have a map. So start practicing and maybe say, well, doing that seems overwhelming. So break it down, make it small. Okay, let's just start with love. And then you can just start to notice, okay, can you connect with the inner resource of love right now? And then as you do that, you might notice, what are the obstacles? What are the conditions and circumstances in which you seem to be blocked from connecting with that inner resource of love? This is going to provide you with an exact map. Now you can just start to identify, okay, here are the places that I need to practice. So every day, let's say that I notice that in the ways that the ways that I'm most challenged connecting with the inner resource of love is when I think about a particular person and interacting with that particular person. And I notice that I start to think very particular thoughts. So now I've got a map. Okay, this is where I have the weaknesses that I need to learn how to deal with this in a more efficient manner. Instead of, because I know my destination is to be fully connected to that inner resource of love unconditionally. In order to have the successful outcome that I want, I have to be connected to that inner resource of love. Because if you think about it, if you want to go to Vancouver and you've booked a flight for, I don't know, November 5th, then if your if you know your friend calls you up on November 4th and says, I think you're ugly, and you start feeling sad and hurt, you're gonna not get on your plane? I mean, maybe you wouldn't. Many of us, many of us would choose to anyway. But a lot of us in our lives, we're wanting to achieve certain things. We want to achieve those inner transformations, but then we know about the ways that we fail. We know about how we fall down, and yet we do nothing to change that, because we just, keep our fingers crossed and hope that somehow it's going to change. Like, magically, somehow I'll stop feeling bad, and I'll stop allowing those bad feelings to block me from accomplishing what I want. But here, what I'm proposing is that when you have clarity about what you want and you realize, you do this little exercise so that you can see, okay, what's required of me in order to make that inner transformation. Then you can start to actually break that down more and see, okay, here are the ways in which I'm failing. Here's how I'm falling down. That's where you want to make the changes. You don't you don't need to continue to reinforce what's already working. That's an interesting idea, but it's like it's where it's the the weakest link kind of idea. If you're on a journey, if you're walking, let's say you're walking to Vancouver, okay, and you're like, okay, I can take the first 5 steps consistently. Works out perfectly. First 5 steps, no problem. Every single time on the 6th step, I fall down. Don't you think you might want to know why you're falling down on the 6th step? Because it's not helping you a lot to take the first 5 steps and then fall down on the 6th. You could keep doing that forever and not get any further. Notice why and how you're falling down on the 6th step. It's like, oh, interesting. There's a big hole there. Now I know that. Now I could do something differently. So back to the example, if I know that in order to achieve my desired outcome, I need to make that inner transformation so that I am somebody who's connected consistently to the inner resource of love, then I want to find out, how do I disconnect from the inner resource of love? What are the conditions under which I make the choice to disconnect from that inner resource of love? Because it is a choice. But if I'm not aware of it, then I'm making that choice unconsciously. And then I'm looking around like, oh, I've fallen down. Gee, I don't know why. So have to become aware of that. So I want to notice, how is it that I'm making the choice to disconnect from the inner resource of love? And I might notice, as I was giving the example, maybe there's a particular person. And when I interact with that particular person or just think about that particular person, I might notice that I make the choice to disconnect from the inner resource of love. So then I know exactly where that weak point is. So then I can take consistent steps daily so that I can heal that. So I can imagine, do it in your imagination. I can imagine having the interaction with that person, whatever that interaction is. Maybe they say a certain thing. Maybe they give me a certain look. Whatever it is, I imagine that. And then I notice, okay, how exactly am I disconnecting from that inner resource of love? Because when I have clarity about exactly how I'm doing it, I have a choice. I don't have to do it anymore. Then I can choose to remain connected to the inner resource of love. So then I can imagine, okay, just slow it down. When you slow things down, it's really powerful, because when things are fast, you do it the habitual way. You really don't have any choice other than to do it the habitual way when you do it fast. So in your imagination, if you're doing everything really fast, you just imagine the person and they give you the look and they say the thing, and then it's like automatically you disconnect from the inner resource of love, and there's no choice there. But if you slow it down, and you can even insert pauses, it's like, imagine, however it works, the person gives me the look. Okay, pause. You can pause there for as long as you need until you can become aware. Okay, let me reconnect to the inner resource of love. So even though I'm imagining they're giving me that look, I can remain connected to the inner resource of love. This works for any inner resource. I'm just using this example. So I can remain connected to the inner resource of love, even when they're giving me that look, even when they're saying those things. And by practicing this every day, and it only needs to be for a moment. Remember what I said about if you wanted to learn to play a musical instrument, if you just practice for 10 minutes every day, you'll get better at it. So if you want to get better at remaining connected to an important inner resource, if you practice just for a few minutes every day, you will get better at it. And again, a lot of people, they'll say, yeah, but nothing big has changed. I did it once and it didn't work. And if that's the attitude that you take, then you really should not expect to get better results. Because think about how unrealistic that would be. If you've never played the violin and you pick up the violin for 10 minutes and then you say, it didn't work. Just would be the wrong expectation, don't you think? I mean, wouldn't it be, if it's important to you to get good at playing the violin, then you would probably want to have a more realistic expectation and say, yeah, I'm willing to continue to do this every day for as long as it takes because it's important to me. And if you think about something that's important, an outcome that's important to you, whatever that is, whether that's having the improved health, whether it's having the improved finances, whether it's having the improved relationships, whatever it is, isn't that worth 5 minutes a day consistently? Even if day by day you say, I'm not sure that much is changing. Isn't it wouldn't it be worthwhile to at least commit, say, like, I don't know, 3 months of 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day to that thing, to finding out how you can make the improvements bit by bit to get to where you want to get to? I think it is. I mean, from my own experience, I know for myself that it is, and I'm I'm sharing this information with you because I'm pretty certain that it will also work well for you, because I'm pretty sure that this is just basic uh ba basic information about how things work well. And if you have a different answer, something better that works for you, that's great. And if that's the case, I definitely encourage you to start your own YouTube channel. Um, but that's all I got for today. So for those who are here live, I'm happy to stay on for the group coaching. For those who are not here live, if you would like to be here live, um, then you're welcome to be. And the way you can get that information is you can sign up for my newsletter at my website, which is joeylott.com. And when you do so, then two things will happen. Number one, you will get instant access to the free ebook that I have available, which covers 5 of the fundamental laws that govern creation. And second thing is you'll get an email that will provide you with the instructions for how to join these meetings live every Monday. And when you do join live, then of course, not only will you have access to the brilliant talk and my stunning good looks, but you will also get to participate in the group coaching, which follows. And so that's awesome. And then the other thing that I want to mention is that if you are somebody who would be interested in my support, helping you over 9 weeks to be able to put into place simple, sustainable habits that can change your life, and get daily access to my support with any questions that you might have, you may be interested in the Manifesting Truth program, which I offer, which is a paid program. And you can get more information about that at joeylott.com/manifesting-truth. And I'll provide the link in the description on YouTube. So for those who are here live, again, we'll stay on for the group coaching. And I just want to say thank you very much and blessings to you all, for all those who are watching on YouTube. Bye for now.